especially at the college, I think the way men are socialized, it's a lot harder to be bisexual. So the more bisexual people there are, the better everything configures, right? There is the more and just the more fluid. It's even for otherwise straight. Like, I in general exist in society as a straight man, but not in an orgy. I'm all game for all things.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 195. We're Finn and Emma, and today, first of all,
it's Monday!
It's a Monday episode, which you can all tell because it's being released on a Monday, but we're super, super excited to get this.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
We're super excited to get this out here. So the title of today's episode is Rethinking Orgies, Creating More Inclusive, Diverse, and Safer Spaces to Explore Sexuality. So we actually have a roundtable discussion for you with three amazing people, Leanne, G, and Zach, and they were all on previous episodes. So just throw those out there as well. Leanne was on episode 173, G was on episode 180, and Zach on episode 141.
Yeah, so they all have a very unique niche that they fill, which is they went to some elite university. G and Zach both went to Yale, and Leanne went to Oxford. And while they were at these universities, they were part of and or organized orgy clubs or sex parties or the like.
Yes.
And they will talk a lot more about this for sure. So it's a fantastic discussion. Again, as the name implies, they're doing their best to create diverse, safe spaces to explore sexuality in a wide variety of ways. And we're just really excited to be able to finally get this out there. We recorded this
a few months ago,
and it's been a crazy summer, and we're just now getting around to it. So thank you, Leanne, G, and Zach, and sorry for the long wait.
Yes.
A couple of things about this episode that we wanted to mention. First of all, you will hear peaceful bird noises in the background. Those are on our end. I could have edited them out.
But we left them in.
But I left them in because I thought, why not?
Yeah.
It's pretty peaceful.
Yeah.
So you're welcome for the bird noises. Also, there is a trigger warning around the 35-minute mark into the interview, which would probably add a couple of minutes here. So probably around 40 minutes. Leanne's telling a story, I believe, about somebody getting drunk at one of the parties and taking advantage of somebody else. I think it was Leanne talking about this. It's a fairly short story. It's not super graphic, but we did want to make sure to at least put this out there. If that's something that you think would trigger you in any way, you might want to skip around the 35 to 40 minute mark.
Yes, and this is also one of our most explicit episodes. So just putting that out there as well. There's some sexy stuff happening.
Some sexy stuff happening. But also some really amazing conversations about inclusivity, the deeper meaning behind these parties and orgies and everything. So yeah, it is a fantastic conversation. I even share an orgy story.
Yep.
There's a hilarious blooper at the end. This one gets a little bit of everything. And you'll also notice it's one of our longer episodes ever because, well, we were talking to three awesome people about a fun subject.
Yeah. And so we kept talking.
We cut it short, to be frank.
It's a huge, huge, huge thank you to Leanne, G, and Zach for sharing everything with us and for creating this episode with us.
Yeah.
We're really excited to get it out there.
Yeah, and just a couple of very short announcements. We're not going to go into all of them because, again, this is a long episode, but we wanted to say a huge thank you to the Patreon community out there. We're into 170 plus members. It's awesome. Everybody that joins is awesome. So if you think you're awesome, join us. And if you're looking for community.
Yeah.
So again, thank you to everybody for that.
You can find more information on Patreon on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the community tab and you'll find it there. Also, we announced last week, meet and greets are coming back. So we have both a virtual meet and greet and in-person meet and greets coming up over the next couple of months. So on our website, go check it out. normalizing non-monogamy.com, and all the information there.
Click on the community events tab. You'll see information for Patreon, for the in-person meet and greets, and for the virtual meet and greets, and how we're handling all of those, and the dates, and how to learn more.
Yes.
So I think with that, if you want to ever come on the show, if you want to be a Leanne, G, or Zach, you just reach out.
Yeah.
And
tell us you want to come on the show.
Tell us you want to come on the show. Let us know about your story. You can head over to our website again and click on the Contact Us tab. Send us a voicemail. Send us an email. We loved getting them. We respond to all of them. And we will hope to hear from you soon.
And now,
let's go enjoy
this amazing discussion.
Welcome back, Leanne, Zach, and G, to the show. We're super excited to have all of you here. And Emma, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm here too.
So you all fill a very specific niche in the world. You've all been to, let's say, Ivy League level or beyond. I don't know. We'll let you guys decide what the ranking is between Oxford and Yale. And you all are members of or organizers of clubs, sex parties, events at those universities. So we wanted to bring you all back to talk about what do these actually look like and what is maybe like the deeper meaning behind this. How do we create these environments maybe at scale, or how do people take lessons from what you all have done and do this for themselves and do it in a way that's inclusive and safe and fun and just creates a better environment. So we're thrilled to have you all back. And just thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think we should just start here with some introductions in case people listening haven't listened to your episodes previously. So I'm just going to call on each one of you and we'll go from there to just do a general introduction. And Zach, I'm going to have you go first.
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. So my introduction to the sex party world was finally working up the courage to, what my junior year of college, I finally worked up the courage to ask my friend if I could get an invite to a naked party. And he's like, well, there's no naked parties coming up, but we're having an orgy tonight. Want to come by? And, so it was kind of a total surprise for me. And I went, and it was just a beautiful experience, such that I was inspired and hooked and just, and felt a calling, if you will, to use this as a model to shake up people's lives for the better. And when that group of friends that invited me to party with them graduated, it kind of fell upon me to make it a sustainable thing, and so thus the Yale organization was born. Oh, since then I have lived in a lot of different places, particularly Paris and New Orleans, where I have been involved in a lot of sex party scenes there, and so having perspective of what it's like at different ages and in different parts of the world definitely informs how I look back at college and all the things I would do differently nowadays. But the world is different nowadays. So.
Yeah, that's an understatement. How long ago did you go to your first orgy, and then how long? Was the Yale Orgy Club that you founded? I suppose we're going to use the term founded. Was it an official university sanctioned club? And I guess, when did that happen? Yeah.
Founding is a word that, it's you could use it for, convenience sake, but, it's hard to say founding. I don't know. But, so this happened in 2012. And then in January 2012, I went to the first one. That group graduated in May 2012. I ended up leaving college at the end of 2014. So in that year and a half, I was hosting them. And in that year and a half, it kind of got consolidated into, an apparatus, organized apparatus for putting on these events. It wasn't until after my time, I think, G was involved in this, that it actually was an official like student organization with money from the university. And I don't know if the university was privy to all the details, but of the activities, but certainly the politics of it.
And so maybe that's a great place to like hand it off to G.
Yes, except Zach, can you describe just briefly kind of what your relationship style is now so people have a little context around that? And then we're going to jump to G.
Oh, yeah. I'm poly as fuck. I use the word relationship anarchist, but that has a lot of bad rap. I'm very dedicated to the people in my life. I guess I go over the years, depending on the configuration, I've gone from very like sort of coupled polyamorous to solo polyamorous. What you'd call me now, I don't know. I'm out in Nevada. None of my partners are out here. So I'm living very solo poly at the moment, but fortunately I get a lot of visitors. So G came out and visited for a little bit. That was wonderful. I got the pugs with me.
Awesome.
They're my primaries.
Wow.
your pugs.
Hey.
I love it.
No worries. Well, thank you, Zach, for being here again. And maybe the baton gets handed both in our show and back at the Yale Orgy Club to G to take things over.
Hi, I'm G. I'm a 25-year-old human, they, them, currently in Merida, Mexico, but I'll be moving towards Leanne in the fall, which I'm excited about. And my, experience with orgies, as you heard, comes from organizing at Yale. When I got not roped into it, I was going as a partner of, not yet. I was going as a partner of someone and who was throwing orgies, and then I realized I might as well be in charge because I'd like to be involved with the parties I'm already going to, and that's how I met Zach as a kind of a grandfather of the orgy team, as you call it. And right now, my relationship style, I guess, would also be solo poly. I have many lovers and people in my life who are, again, I'm committed to, but definitely trying to break out of the traditional primary partner that aren't pugs stage.
Awesome. And maybe just to clarify, when you took over, Zach alluded to the fact that the Yale Orgy Club became a sanctioned organization. Did you take over a leadership role? And if so, is that accurate that you were able to help push it to like official status?
Well, so that's two different questions, really. I didn't take over directly from Zach. I took over from an intermediary group, and I was able to help push official status of an organization that's purpose wasn't to throw orgies. It was more like an intellectual academic arm of the same group of people that threw the orgies. Like, we'd get together and talk about the parties and how to do them better. But that the actual orgies themselves, I want to be clear, were never officially sanctioned by Yale, even though we did like go to the student health services to get condoms and lube in large quantities. But
so it was more of orgy theory.
Exactly.
Perfect. I can get behind that. All right. Thank you, G, and thank you for being here again. And Leanne, I guess
you're up.
Taking us to the UK and to let's hear it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Leanne. I'm bisexual and polyamorous as fuck. And I guess I've been non-monogamous for quite a long time. I've been non-monogamous ever since I was 17 years old when I got into my first open relationship. But then, I was kind of exploring like a whole, my sexuality and stuff at university. And I was kind of having like quite a lot of like group sex, like, I just kind of organized stuff like through Tinder and just meeting people and stuff like that. And then kind of how I got into the Oxford orgy scene was completely by accident. I slept with a woman, we went to a party together and then like afterwards we slept together. And like, it was, while we were having our pillow talk afterwards, she was like, so have you heard of the Piers Gaveston Society? And I said, you what? Because I basically thought it was a myth. I'd heard about it. There was in the news a couple years back. There was some scandal to do with like our Prime Minister David Cameron like putting his dick in a pig, and there was stuff, Piggate. I'm sure you've all heard about it. So it's that society, and so I thought it was a myth. I thought that it was just a thing that kind of posh private school boys did, and then they just kind of told other people about it for clout. But no, it was a real thing, and so this woman, she was a lesbian, she told me, the Piers Gaveston Society is very different from what it used to be. Basically, there was a massive queer takeover in 2015, and basically, like, the entire ethos of the society changed from just kind of like an old boys club type thing to like a very queer, sex positive and inclusive space. And then she was just like, I've heard things about kind of like the parties you've been organizing on your own, and I'd love for you to attend. I'd love for you to come. And so I got involved in that. I ended up kind of inviting about like 10% of the guest list because I was sleeping with a fair few people at the time. And I kind of just invited them all to come with me. And, the Piers Gaveston Society holds 2 events a year, one in the summer, one in the winter. The winter one's much smaller. It's about 80 to 100 people. The one in the summer is closer to about 300 people. And it's absolutely not sanctioned by the university at all. Like, the university has spoken out against this society many, many, many times, partly just because, it gives the university quite a bad reputation. Like, in the news, every year the paparazzi try and kind of like find out where the secret location is and basically just track us down. And also because, there's, a fair bit of illegal activity, just drug wise, that goes on at these parties. So that was another aspect of it. But, I've had loads of fun. And, I graduated in 2020, but I'm still kind of in contact with the committee and stuff. And obviously, things got paused like over COVID, but that's kind of been like what's going on. As for myself, so as I said, I'm polyamorous. I operate kind of like a non-hierarchical polyamory style kind of relationship. I do have one anchor partner, and we kind of intend to build a life together, but we're also open to kind of more people joining us on that endeavor. And both of us have other lovers who, we didn't kind of prescribe this label. It was something that was agreed between the parties based on like what we actually wanted out of our connection. So I have 3 other lovers, and so does he. And yeah, it's a great time. And I also kind of talk about my adventures and things on a blog that I run called Polyphilia. So yeah, more about that in like the episode that I did with you guys a while back.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
And links to all of that are in the show notes too, like all of your episodes and everything like that.
Yeah. And Leanne, one of the things you wanted to clarify, and you clarified with us before I hit the record button, was you were not, where Zach and G both took on sort of leadership roles, you were not an official orgienizer. However, G pointed out that with the amount of work you've done, you are an honorary orgienizer in their eyes. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad. Thank you for acknowledging that. I mean, to be honest, like I didn't want to get involved like on the committee kind of stuff because I didn't want my name like anywhere like near that. I guess like during that time, like I was also studying law when I was at Oxford, so that was I was making applications and stuff, and I very much didn't want to get like in trouble. Now I'm a bit more lax about it, but I was just trying to be careful at the time. And to be honest, I think I was in a quite nice sweet spot where like I was having all the fun and getting all the perks, but didn't necessarily have any of the responsibility. So yeah, it worked out pretty well for me, basically.
Yeah, well, perfect. Well, and I think one of the things that we were excited about having all of you here is like really like figuring out like helping people understand what these parties actually look like, and perhaps they look different on either side of the pond, but like, yeah, how do they get started? How do we, really the safety, inclusivity, all of that stuff, where I think to sort of like lift the mystique, the mystery behind that. And so I maybe like Zach, what did these parties look like when you founded them at Yale, or when you joined your first one? Like, what did they physically look like?
Yeah. So when I first sort of like started doing them, it was definitely the Wild West of college orgies. I had no idea what I was doing, and did like went full cavalier, YOLO, didn't do research, didn't know what research one would do. Like, there's so much. So the first one I did was just tell everyone, like, show up, like, everyone. It was the same day as our spring fling, so everyone was already out drunk and having fun anyways, and it was massive, like, for the space. It was like a couple bedroom house, and there was between 50 and 70 people there, and it was crazy fun, and I can't believe that nothing bad happened there, because it was so chaotic and so, like, uncontrolled and reckless. And after that, I was like, okay, I really need to be responsible if I'm going to do these things. Otherwise, something bad's going to happen, and I'm going to get a lot of, or then, it's going to not only be bad for me, but bad for the entire, the existence of these sort of events. So after that, I got very sort of targeted with my invitations. I knew enough people that would be fun that just off the top of my head, I could send out an email list and get maybe 20 to 30 people, which I think 25 was the sweet spot for me going forward with just hosting it myself. When I wanted to go bigger, I needed to get people to help me. And then after that, so when you're combining it with Spring Fling or other events, there's no need to get it started. Everyone shows up already ready to party. But there was a couple ways we first sort of, just had people, drink. How do you get from just people having cocktails in my apartment to having it be an orgy? There was a couple things I did. One, whenever I would greet people always in my big furry red robe and sort of like give them the lowdown as to like what the expectations were, what sort of how consent, talk about consent in a really like, I don't know, at that point. Now it feels very standard, but it felt radical to talk about consent the way, we talk about it now in terms of sex parties. But back then, it definitely like thinking about consent at every step of the way was just not something I was ever told to think about it, and didn't really exist, at least in our sort of the culture of the university at the time. So that definitely, I tried to like sort of, before people even letting people into the room, sort of like put people into that mentality. And then, there's a couple. The simplest way is just get your slutty friend and be like, hey, let's start this party and start doing things in the center of the room. One time I invited people for to have a cunnilingus skill share, where people would like,
I love that,
demonstrate their favorite techniques, and people would volunteer to be the model of it. And that's a great way to sort of like build community and get things started. There was a spin the bottle, but like any consent spin the bottle. So when it lands on someone, you ask them, can I do this? But it could be anything, anywhere from like, can you slap me in the face, to can I go down on you, to all these sort of things. Games like that. Since, graduating and hosting them in the real world, so to speak, there's a lot of things that I've done. and people around me have done at other ones I've been to, from having a show, like a little burlesque performance, naked acrobatics, a fisting workshop, like teaching people skills is always a great thing to do. Probably the best one that by best, I mean most successful in getting everyone banging right away, was a tantric massage artist came and had everybody like pair up and start, doing, touching each other's bodies in various sensual ways. And it's like, okay, if you feel comfortable, change partners and now do these other massage things. And so once you sort of like create an activity where everyone's already touching each other and in the mood,
it doesn't take much to go further.
It's already there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think that is a fantastic overview. And I think, like you said, though, like it started the Wild West and you kind of realize quickly, like, I have to like reel it in at least a little bit to create the safety and the comfort and the security. And then, when you kind of took over or came into the picture, how did it look? And like, what did you do, or how did you help sculpt the way it looked moving forward?
Yeah. So by the time I arrived on the scene, there was already penned by Zach, I believe, a set of rules that had to be read to all guests of the party before they entered. And these included the basic, rules of consent, to ask before you touched anyone, even for a hug, to say who was in charge. One of the additions around my time was that people, the organizers themselves were wearing bracelets, so we were easily identifiable because the parties had grown a lot larger. But also like saying, hey, please don't get too inebriated, or like basically you need to be sober to give consent. Also, if someone says no or asks you to leave, you must leave. And, just kind of making sure people felt safe. We asked that people didn't divulge identities or take photos, everyone put their phones away. So there was already protocol, and there was already, there was already a lot of structure to the events. And so, but when I got there, it was about, I guess, honing this sense of safety, and especially with the rise and visibility of, the culture of violence, sexual violence on college campuses, especially in the States, and a few incidents just on our campus specifically while I was an undergrad, right? We had to put a lot more emphasis on making sure that the spaces continued to encourage exploration, but also, we had a brown list and a black list. If, let's say, an ex that you just didn't want to see hook up with other people, or a cousin went to the same school, you could put them on the brown list. But like, we have a no questions asked blacklist as well for, if this someone shouldn't ever be allowed at one of our parties. And so there was a lot of conflicting things like going around in terms of like whisper networks. And a lot of times, just to be fair, we just had to not invite a lot of people if there was any contention around them whatsoever. So yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it can be tricky to navigate all of that and all of those different people and dynamics.
Yeah, especially when they're your classmates.
Right.
Or your TAs. We had a few grad students. We tried to keep the age gaps not so big. First years weren't technically allowed to go either, so frocos could come.
And what did, like, the size, like Zach said, like the first one he did was probably a little too big. By the time you came into the picture, what, like the size of the parties, and like where were they hosted? Were they what did that look like?
So we tried to host in a different location every party just to keep things fun. The novelty is not just the sex in a room full of other people. The novelty is every single aspect about it. That's what I like about orgies. You never know what's going to happen. And we threw them in basements. We threw them in
my basement.
On what?
That first basement you went to and talked
Yes.
about that was my basement. I love
Exactly.
that. Even after I graduated, that people still used my basement.
It was great. It had a ball pit. It was a good time. We also threw in like a barn. We used 2 floors on the same building once, so we kind of had like a multi-tier. We had a whole 3-story house one time. Basically, the organizer team had to cajole their off-campus friends for use of these spaces.
That makes sense.
Networking.
Yes, exactly.
I think maybe one question, and I want to kick it over to Leanne too as well. But like when somebody walks into this, when they show up, like do they walk in and it's just like people going at it, or is there like it's maybe just a cocktail hour and people are chatting, and it just would seem like your quote unquote normal party?
Well, that really depends on what time you arrive, because we didn't actually.
I completely agree.
Yeah, we didn't actually give the address out of the location. We'd meet people on a corner nearby every half an hour from like, let's say 10 to 12. You had 4 pickup options, can't do math, 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12, etc. And by the time it was midnight, there's already people naked, I'm sure. But if you get there at 10, everyone's just going to mill around awkwardly for another hour or so.
Right.
That's interesting, because for our parties, right, we all had to, we all arrived at the same time, because like we were taken to the location by coach. So you had to be on a coach at a certain time, and then you had to, and then, you know, and if you missed it, you missed it, right? And then the coach would like take you to like the Airbnb that was booked. And the Airbnb would usually be like a mansion or like a 3-story house or like some kind, or like a farmhouse or whatever, like that had like 26 bedrooms or something ridiculous. And so yeah, like everyone arrived at the same time. So like for us, for our parties, instead of just having people be fashionably late or whatever, everyone showed up at the same time. There was like a talk at the start about consent and stuff, and then everyone goes in and like everyone just kind of, you know, talks and drinks and chats and dances and stuff. And then kind of bit by bit, like people start going off in pairs or 3s or 4s or 6s or like whatever. You know, they start kind of leading each other like upstairs to the bedrooms and stuff like that. And so it kind of, the party starts in different ways, like each time I've been. So far I've been to 3 of these parties, and every single time it's different. So the first time that I went, my partner was actually the one who started the party. So because he was so nervous that he wouldn't get anyone. He was so nervous he'd be going to and then he'd be like the one person who like didn't get any action, that I think he massively overcompensated. Started talking to the first hot girl that he met there, and then like, I don't know, within the first hour, like they were having sex, and then everyone else just kind of joined in like after they did that. So that was kind of how the first one, and then after that, I think the second one, you know, I think he just kind of got into the swing of things, because like my partner, he massively catastrophizes like whenever he's at these events where he's like, oh no, what if I'm the one who gets left out? Like I absolutely need to get in on this before everyone else does it, and then they leave me behind. But every time, consistently, he has always been like one of the first 5 people to get the party started. So it's hilarious. Like the second time, like, you know, he was he came to the party with me, and then another girl he was seeing, another 2 girls he was seeing, and then he was sleeping with one of the girls, and then we were in like the sex tent, and he made her squirt like all over the place, like everywhere. And so obviously that was a spectacle. And I think a lot of the men there didn't know how to make women squirt. So then when they saw him do that, they just looked at him and they were just like, holy shit, dude, what? And then just everyone was just like, damn, like I need to get in on this. Yeah. So, and then like the third party was like another friend of mine, Bex, and Bex just kind of decided to rope in a couple guys to give them like a public whipping with a chain flogger that they owned. So then that kind of also really set the mood. So yeah, it kind of really depends. But like for me, you know, there's like a period of mingling, and then kind of about like an hour or 2 in, like people like start kind of, you know, getting touchy-feely and going upstairs to make out and stuff. And yeah, you know, it could be like you could just be like chatting one moment and then just kind of witnessing like someone getting spanked within an inch of their life like in the next moment. So yeah, it's all kinds of wild things like have happened. And yeah, it's been, yeah, it was so fun. Like I really miss it.
Well, and I think that's a great, Zach, I hope you're taking notes on one of your new workshops you can throw is the intro to squirting workshop.
Yeah.
I think Zach will be just fine at that.
Appreciate that. Actually, in New Orleans, one of the demonstrations we had was a woman that could make herself squirt so much she would put out candles as like a burlesque act. Performance.
Love that.
That's amazing. Oh my god.
All right.
Oh boy. That's amazing.
Go ahead.
I miss these parties too.
Well, I wanted to say one thing. Sorry, Emma. That like Leanne, you said you've been to 3 of the like larger, I guess, the Piers Gaveston parties, but you have also, in your own right, hosted a large number of your own gatherings. So like your experience isn't limited to that. And I think I just wanted to make that clear too to people that like you have done a lot of the like vetting and creating safe spaces and done a lot of that work as well on your own to like how to make these spaces inclusive and safe. And the consent piece is super important as well.
Yeah, no, so the largest kind of orgy that I have personally organized had about 15 people. And like below that, like I don't really know at what point you would start considering an orgy. I don't think a threesome is an orgy. I would say like maybe 6 people would be considered an orgy, 6 and up. And so I've organized like quite a few of those, and yeah, like I it's kind of easier to do it like on a smaller scale, you know, because like most of the time it's just me and like a bunch of friends who I've known for ages, or a bunch of Tinder matches who like, you know, I feel are pretty solid people, and then we just kind of get together because, you know, I would meet people in Tinder, I'd meet another person in Tinder, and I'd be like, you know what, you know, you're super cool. Would you like to meet some of the other people I'm banging? And they'd be like, yeah, obviously. And then we just kind of do that, you know, they'd hook up, see how they get on, and then the next suggestion would be to meet up as a group. So that was just kind of like how I operated at the time. But like, you know, all the orgies that I personally organized were like people that I personally knew, people that I'd personally slept with, or like people that they like had slept with. So it was all like a very a much more like intimate affair, like compared to the kind of Piers Gaveston parties where it was just kind of friends of friends of friends of friends, which we also had a blacklist. So similar to what G said, you know, like if you had like a creepy ex, or like if you knew someone who had just done some dodgy shit, like, you know, like they were immediately put on the blacklist and they'd never get invited to any of these parties. So like there were kind of precautions set that way as well. And, you know, we'd all kind of have conversations about like consent. Everyone had to sign like a contract, not really a contract, but, you know, we had to like read a document about consent and then kind of sign our names and agree to it to kind of formalize it in a way. And everyone had to go through that. Like it was like a mandatory process of like going to these parties. And I guess like in addition to that, it's just kind of about like keeping your eyes and ears open like during the event itself, and kind of making sure that everyone is, you know, not too inebriated that they can't consent, or like, you know, that no one's kind of pressuring anyone to do anything they don't want to do. And one that I really like is kind of instilling like a universal safe word at these events. So at one of the events that I was at, I can't remember why, but the safe word was orchid, like the flower. And, you know, that was just kind of like understood by everyone. Like if someone said orchid, like stop immediately, like whatever you were doing, no questions asked. And, you know, and I'm sure that was like useful to like a lot of people who were like perhaps doing more kinky play, or I mean, I guess like any other kind of sex as well. Like, you know, it's not just restricted to kink, but I think that was mostly the context in which it was used. And apart from just kind of all the like the sex that was happening, and this is at the like the Piers Gav stuff, like they had some like bondage experts come in. They had someone who kind of specialized in making sex furniture, and he was like showing off his collection. There was someone brought in like a Sibian. Do you know what a Sibian is?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I have a great Sibian story, but that's for another time.
Oh, yeah. You know, like, so they, like, you know, there was that kind of, that was brought in, and there was like a big wooden X that you could like chain people to or handcuff people to. And, you know, just all kinds of things like that, that you could just kind of play around with at the event. Yeah, as for my kind of own parties, like, you know, I didn't have the kind of the budget or finances or anything like that. I was just kind of like, yeah, you know, come to my house, bring some booze, have a good time. Beyond that, like, it wasn't that deep. But like, yeah, at the bigger parties where like, they were ticketed events and everyone kind of contributed a little bit to the budget, like they could splash out on like things like a DJ or like these like experts coming in or like the venue and the drinks and etc. So yeah, all around a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And sorry, I cut you off, Emma.
It's okay. I've been trying to get a word in here.
Know,
you keep cutting me off. Have any of you ever had to kick someone out of a party or pull someone aside and try to handle that situation if you realize there's an unsafe or uncomfortable situation?
Yes. I remember there was, so I was with a group of friends, and basically, like some of them got quite high, like they took some kind of pill, I don't know what it was. And like one of my friends was like quite out of it. And basically, there had been a guy who was like hitting on her, like for, even before like she kind of became a bit woozy. And then I think like he just kind of spotted that she like was in like her words were like increasingly like getting like slurred and that like she wasn't responding or reacting as quickly to kind of conversation. And then instead of, reporting it to someone, he kind of zeroed in on that and started feeling her up. And then, it took a while for us to recognize what was going on because I think we were just involved in our own conversation. But then, like, once we kind of saw what was happening, he was just kind of, like, being, like, really creepy with her. That, like, we immediately, like two of my friends, like, literally just pulled him off her and then, like, dragged him to, like, the organizers of the party, like, for them to handle him. So, like, that's the only incident that I've kind of, like, run into. I've just realized you may have to put a trigger warning on this. So like maybe edit that in after. So that was like the only instance that I kind of like remember like people having to take like action on that front. But otherwise, people have been good about it. Another time, I guess, when I was at one of these parties, there was, so like, me and my partner were just standing around. And then suddenly like I heard like a slap. And like my partner, he was like, what was that? And he turned around and there was a guy who had just whipped him, like without his consent. He had like a flogger with him and he just kind of like, just whacked him on the ass. And my partner was like, dude, what the fuck? And the guy was like, oh, sorry, couldn't resist. And like, my partner has a really nice ass, but that was not okay. And so like I went to the organizers about it, but like we couldn't track the guy down, which was really annoying because like there were quite a lot of people with floggers in the room. So like we couldn't kind of distinguish who it was. So like those are like two incidents that come to mind. The first one is definitely more scary than the second one. The second instance, like my partner just didn't want to make it like a huge deal out of it. But, like stuff like that does happen at these events, and I think we need to acknowledge that like sometimes like people let some bad apples in or people just don't know how to act in these situations. And so you have to be really vigilant and, just it's not just about like having like a good time and just like fulfilling your hedonistic fantasies, but also keeping aware of like the people around you. And so, like I'm not gonna kind of sugarcoat all this and say that like it was all just like sunshine and rainbows and like people just like fulfilling their like deepest desires and things like that, because like some like shit happens, and my experience like has mostly been very positive, but for these two instances, and I think it's important to kind of raise awareness that like stuff like this does happen.
Yeah. No, thank you, Leanne.
Zach or G, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing that it bears mentioning, and it's easy to forget about on retroflexion, but the tremendous amount of emotional, like sort of like energy that goes into hosting events. Like I probably spent 2 weeks prior to an event, just anxious about safety or anxious about, whatever reasons. And it was kind of, I think the reason why I sort of took a step back off of them in like 2019 was just the emotional labor of them was just so intense for me, because safety is such a huge concern for me. And I really, and the fact that I feel so responsible for everyone involved, it was a lot. There's a couple incidences. One was just a friend of mine showed up way too drunk and I should have just asked him to not come in, but I think he was making people uncomfortable, just, ogling them and masturbating and being really drunk. I had to ask him to leave. Another one was a guy I didn't know. He and I were having a threesome with my partner at the time. And we were like in this weird situation where we were physically he was trying to physically box me out of it. And it was like, my first instinct was that it was playful and like playing along, and then all of a sudden we're in a wrestling match, and I was having a great time. I'm a wrestler, but then it was like, oh wait, this isn't good vibes. He's actually being aggressive and trying to like push me away from sexually engaging with my own partner, and then I had another friend see what's going on and then jump on his back for full attack, and like, okay, de-escalate. Person, you should leave.
That's insane. What?
I actually never thought I would throw someone in a headlock at an orgy for non-sexual reasons, but here we are.
That needs to be the tagline of this episode. Never thought I'd put someone in a headlock at an orgy, but here we are.
For non-sexual reasons, that's the important part.
But beyond that, it was usually the next day somebody was like, hey, somebody made me feel uncomfortable by doing this, or this thing happened that wasn't okay. And then I would oftentimes, it was usually being that I felt responsible, and two, they were usually friends of mine. I would pretty much always follow up with them like, hey, I know you're a good person. We're all learning how to be good people. This happened. You made someone feel this way. Let's use this as an opportunity to grow. And so I had a lot of those conversations in like the weeks that followed these events.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I think I want to start a conversation about, because like just to kind of bring the mood up a bit. I would love it if, if we could share some funny stories that have happened at orgy, because the one you just shared about like the wrestling, obviously, it's awful, like the guy got really aggressive with you, but that's also fucking hilarious. And I'd love it if like the three of us could kind of share like stories of just like funny stuff that's happened at these orgies, because I think like, I don't know, I talked about this on my episode, but orgies can be a strangely wholesome atmosphere, like considering like what goes on at them. And so yeah, like, I kind of want to open that to the floor, like maybe G, like you could talk about kind of anything that comes to mind.
I completely agree. I think too, like in G, if you had anything too on like the, like not to be a downer, but like if there was something that came to mind, and then maybe kind of like parlaying it into, Leanne's question, because I think it's a great one.
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to make sure I'm not repeating myself from anything I said in my episode too, just for redundancy. But
it's okay if you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it twice.
Well, I do, to address the more serious component. I was pretty lucky in my time when I was present as an organizer to not have to deal with any overtly, harmful behavior, particularly like toxic or anything that needed to be addressed. But it did happen occasionally, and I will validate, Zach, your anxiety, because I totally got that before, during events, and even after, with the fallout of, let's say, if anyone just didn't have a great time. And towards the end, I really stopped participating as much, because when they were so large, I wanted to make sure that everyone was having a good time. And so I would just kind of roam around, like, a kiss here or there. But it was much easier to monitor, not as a participant. I will say, let's see, Leanne, do you have a story already on the tip of your tongue to share? That would be funny, because I was still, I think, mired in the more serious conversation. So if you want to give me a sec to brainstorm and share yours,
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've got a few, which is kind of why I brought it up. but I didn't want to just kind of jump in with
please,
the
exactly.
Yeah.
No, please give us what you got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, in terms of just kind of to inject some levity into this conversation, you know, like obviously lots of like good things have happened, and not just kind of in terms of like pleasure, but also just like objectively funny things have happened like when I was at these sex parties. So like there's two stories that come to mind, so I'm going to tell both of them. So the first one, so before I tell the story, like how explicit am I allowed to be?
All of
the things.
Yep, go for it.
This episode is we mark everything as explicit. It's all good.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so basically, the first story, this was in I think 2019. It was like in like early 2019, and you know I was on a bed with I think about like 3 or 4 other people. Actually, no, I think it was more than that. It was like several other people, right? We were all kind of like in a pile, but like the involved in that pile was kind of me and like a friend of mine, and then we were both on top of 2 guys. We were both like having sex with 2 guys, and the 2 guys were like lying on their backs, and we were both like, you know, in the like I guess cowgirl position. So you know you got that image in your head now. Cool. And so the other guy so you know I was like having sex with my partner, and she was having sex with some guy that we'd met. Can't remember if his name was Tim or Tom. One of those. And basically Tim/Tom was also into guys, and like we didn't know this. Obviously, like there's tons of like the queer community like represents like a huge chunk of these parties. But anyway, like my own partner is straight, but then my partner does dress in quite like a he does look quite feminine. He looks quite twinky. So then like he gets guys like hitting on him like all the time at these parties. And so this is one of the times where this happened, where, you know, like me and this girl are like riding the 2 of them, and Tim/Tom like turns to my partner and starts trying to make out with him. And my partner was immediately like, whoa. And like, he kind of like pulled back a little bit. And the guy was like, wait, what? And my partner said, no, dude. I'm straight. And the guy was like, oh, wait, but you're wearing a leather harness. And my partner was like, yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm into guys. Like, you know, there's no, like, obviously, like, I'm chill with that, but like it's just not my thing. Sorry, dude. And then there was just like a really awkward silence, like while like me and the girl was still like on top of them, just looking at each other, going like, okay, like where do we go from here? Like, what do you do? How do we diffuse the tension? And then like my partner decided to conclude the situation by like just looking at the guy and just going like, yeah, no, I can't kiss you, bro, but we can hug it out, bro. And they just kind of did like a one-armed hug, like while like the 2, like while me and like the girl were like still on top of them, and it was like the most like ridiculous situation. So that was one, and then the other one was so this was the first party that I went to. So this was in 2018. Was it 20? Yeah, it was 2018, and I was I went, you know, with like a bunch of people that I was with at the time, you know, a bunch of my lovers, etc. One of them, a friend of mine, let's call him, I don't think he'll want me to share his real name, so let's call him Jonah, right? Okay, my friend Jonah. And Jonah's straight, or at least he claims to be, but like I've been saying for years and years and years that he's a closeted bisexual. And obviously he can identify however he wishes, but kind of based on what I know about him, that's just kind of the impression I've gotten. So then we go to this party and stuff, and then, you know, he goes off and disappears somewhere. And like, so I was just having a fun time with my friends. And then at some point, like about like an hour or 2 later, like into the party, I like bump into him again on the dance floor. And I was like, hey, Jonah, where have you been? And he said, I just had a threesome with 2 other guys. And I was like, wait, what? You know, because I up until this point, he was just like, yeah, I'm straight. I'm totally straight. And I said, wait, so what happened? And he was just like, oh yeah, like, you know, these 2 guys, like they like started hitting on me, and they, you know, took me into like a room. And, you know, like they kind of sucked me off and stuff. So then I sucked them off too. And I said, hold on, but I thought you were straight. And he said, yeah, but you know, like I just thought it'd be rude not to do it since they did it to me. And so you know, I don't know, like he still claims he's straight after this whole event, but then, you know, I just find it hilarious that like he sucked not 1 but 2 dicks because he felt it would be rude not to return the favor. And I feel like if that is not the most British thing that I've ever heard, like just the situations you'll get yourself in, honestly. So that's my friend. That's my friend Jonah, and kind of his story of like how he's totally straight but ended up sucking 2 dicks in an orgy. But I'm all for kind of like welcoming kind of sexual experimentation and expression. I do know that quite a lot of people really like let go and try things that they wouldn't normally even dream of trying in normal situations, right? But I think that was just like hilarious because like I just think about that now, and I'm like, how do you even reconcile that? Like, it makes sense if you kind of just like sucked 1 dick, because you felt it would be polite. But 2, I feel there's something else going on here,
I think the thing that we've talked about a lot on the show is like labels are great to start a conversation, but I think that's one where you're like, well, I'm straight, but here's what that looks like for me.
Yeah,
right.
Every once in a while, I'm really polite.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
The social blowjob. I've definitely, that's been a thing in my orgy universe for a while.
Oh, really?
I like the term spaghetti. It's straight until you put it in a hot pot of water with a bunch of other.
Yeah,
it's
I love that, like spaghetti.
I love that too.
It's straight until it gets wet.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Zach or G?
Yeah.
Zach, go for it.
Okay. The one that sticks out most in my mind is my very first event. Probably, what got me hooked, so to speak, was it was winding down the end of the night, and one of the guys who, I guess it was his apartment, he's like, I really feel like tonight won't be complete until we get to see a cum shot. And but I'm spent. Anyone else got some? And the other people with dicks, they were all like, no, I'm out, bro. And I was like, well, I still got some ammo left. And they're like, oh, hey, great, Zach, let's do it. Like, and then like 3 willing people came to help me like get there. And they're like, so what do you need? How can we best make this happen? I'm like, well, it works best with vaginal sex. Great. And so it's like, okay, first person. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm feeling too tight. I can't do it right now. Second person's up. Okay. As a team, we're all doing it. And then we finally, we get it working. And then we find someone who was like, oh yeah, I hadn't even talked to that night, but volunteers to step up to the plate, and then there we are banging in the center of the circle of people chanting, come shot, come shot.
Oh my God.
And then with the glorious finale to all their applause, I came all over this woman, and it was beautiful. And absolutely.
Talk about pressure.
And you said that was your first one?
That was my first one. I know.
That's amazing.
That is incredible. The teamwork.
Yeah.
That is truly amazing.
And that's how then the night ended off with a bang. And
literally,
I introduced myself to the woman afterwards. And
after the fact,
and it was all
amazing.
And then I was like, that's what, when you said it was a wholesome thing, because I feel like that's what was really people like to contrast sexuality and wholesomeness when it's not. Wholesome is about what is good and uplifting for the for yourself as the well-being of a human. And these are such wholesome events. Like, we are here to make each other feel good. We are, it is the glory of it is in the selflessness of it. Like, we just like, what is your fantasy? What is your desire for the night? Let's, as a group, make sure everyone can have what they're, achieve what they're looking for. And that was such an inspiring thing for me that I just felt like orgies have made me a better human and a better community member and all these things. And so I feel like that's what got me hooked. It was the hedonism, great. But what really got, it was the idealistic inspiration of it that really motivated me to host them despite, you know, made you feel like the call to action to host them despite, you know, how scary it was.
I totally agree with that, because you got to see people really vulnerable and like really open to sharing themselves. I think the story I've been thinking about, hearing you two tell about moments that made you feel like warm and part of this larger community, even as everyone's like, you know, dicks in hand and clits under fingers. Like one time I had this weed lube, which I don't know if any of you have ever used. It's basically like, I mean, you know, it affects your mucous membrane, and it's like kind of CBD, and you get all tingly and relaxed. And I am a squirter also. And so basically it just means that like I could squirt forever, because my nervous system is like, no idea what's going on. And so basically everyone's like taking turns making me squirt. And then some people get like weed lube on their hands and start using it on their own genitalia, and they're like, holy shit, this is wild. And this guy is like, my dick is numb, and like everyone's just like having fun with themselves for a second, like with the weed lube, just kind of like, it's like a wholesome masturbatory session, but just everyone kind of playing with sensation. And it was just really cool to notice how we responded and like share our I guess own bodily explorations together, and everyone's just laughing, and it was just a great time. So yeah, very wholesome. It's like, yeah, you're all like touching yourselves, but it's wholesome even in that context.
Yeah, kind of adding on to that kind of level of kind of collaboration and stuff like that. I remembered another story, which is like much shorter. Like basically like at the Piers Gav events that I went to, you know, like in terms of protection, obviously that was like a concern for everyone, right? Like sexual kind of safety and sexual health. And so they completely eliminated that problem by buying like a huge number of condoms and just kind of strewing them like all over the floor. So like you couldn't miss one. Like you had no excuse. Like if you were like, oh, you know, can't find like there's one there. And so like I remember like we were in the sex tent at one of these events, and there was a guy who kind of yelled across the tent, but he was like, someone get me a condom, and then someone was like, here you go, and chucked it across the room at him, and he was like, thank you. And so that was like a whole thing, and you know, everyone was like, yeah. And so yeah, I know what you mean about like just everyone like helping each other out, helping each other have a good time. But yeah, like I guess, you know, if I'm sure like this was kind of a question that you wanted to ask as well, you know, how like obviously like the hedonism is great, but like how do we keep safe? And that's kind of one of the ways.
Yeah, no,
that's
perfect.
Actually a question I was going to bring up, so thank you for diving into that.
Yeah, and I think we have not organized these types of parties at university.
No.
I would say we have co-organized smaller ones on the scale of like maybe 8 to 12 people.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. And I wanted to maybe like, there was something that kind of came up like in the difference on Leanne's end, like where you either get on the coach or you don't, versus what G said, where like we go to the corner every 30 minutes and pick up whoever has decided that was the time they were going to show up. And I think what we've found for the ones that we've done is that like there's sort of everybody has to be there by like essentially kickoff, like because at that point we put everybody in a circle and we basically go around the circle of like you introduce yourself, you introduce like what your dynamic is, what you're interested in, what you're not interested in. Do you have anything that people need to be aware of? Like maybe I have a latex allergy or something to that effect.
People describe their latest STI results and their comfort levels around different levels of play.
Yeah. And so like we basically
called the share circle.
Yeah, the share circle. And so like that can take like if you have 10 or 12 people, like that can take a solid half hour to get through. But then by the time you're done with that, you know basically everybody who's there, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. And again, these are for like a 10 to 12 person party. So I could see how that's probably not as practical if there's 30 to 50 people. But that's sort of the level that we've like, so there is sort of that cutoff time of like it would sort of be in poor taste to show up after the share circle because you don't know, like you might have missed some really valuable information up front there. So that's just sort of our experience on that. And maybe depending on how long this goes, I'll share my uplifting and hilarious orgy story that
It's quite hilarious.
is good. It's basically like a series of events that happened to me throughout a night.
Well, you're teasing it.
All right,
You might as well just say
I'll
it.
just say it really quick and then we'll go on. So this came up briefly in G's episode where I referenced sitting in the kitchen by myself eating Tim Tams. So
I learned about a Tam Tam because of that. Thank you.
Yeah,
They're
excellent.
delicious.
So what happened is we did the share circle, and there was a woman there who like described that she liked to have her neck bitten, and this is going to come up after my first faux pas, which is after the share circle, we kind of like break and everybody went down to the basement, and I stopped to pee for literally like 30 seconds. By the time I got downstairs, everybody was already like on the bed, like preoccupied. And I was like, how the hell did I miss? Like, I've been gone for 30 seconds. So anyway, I'm kind of like on the outskirts, like trying to figure out how to like where I fit in. Luckily for me, one of the women there got really drunk and had to leave, and her husband ended up leaving to go take care of her, and that freed up the woman who said she liked to have her neck bitten.
Moving in for the kill.
So I spend the next, I don't know how long, trying to figure out like, how does she like her neck bitten? Because every way I tried did not work.
Well, you don't know if it worked. She didn't give you any...
there was no physical like emotion or response. So I felt like I was just chewing on this woman with no feedback. So like that didn't feel great. So then move on to like the next phase. At some point, people like paired off into another room, and there was basically 5 of us left. And this wound up being another situation where I had left for a second and I came back, and there were 2 men and 2 women, and they were both like doggy style, but the women were basically facing like the headboard, like a couple inches from the headboard next to each other. So there was like,
the bottom line, there was no room.
There was nowhere for a 5th person to easily enter the situation. So I basically I was like, well, I'm going to go upstairs and eat cookies. So I spent the remainder of the time in the kitchen by myself while everybody...
To be clear, it wasn't the remainder of the time. You came back.
It was a good chunk of the remainder of the time. So yeah, be careful when you step in and out of these spaces, because you never know when opportunities may close up.
Well, but I'd like to just point out that like you didn't take the nice part of the... trying to give you some credit here. You didn't take any of that personally.
No.
Like you just rolled with it. And that's in these group situations, you just sometimes have to do that. Like there, you have to try to roll with
I think
sometimes the awkwardness of things.
To the like point of collaboration and community, like there was never anybody being malicious about this. I didn't have to wrestle anyone like Zach. It was just like, hey, we're doing our thing. And like, by the way, everybody kind of like got oriented. Like, there was no room, and that's okay. Like, and then you just kind of roll with it, and it's not a huge deal. So anyway, that's my
nice.
And you came back
lighthearted
later,
story,
and you got more, so it's all good.
Anyway, all right. So
I know you both, or not you both, all of you touched on briefly, like that it's more than just hedonism. And I wanted to see if any of you had any more like thoughts around like the why do you keep coming back even though there's all of the emotional work and physical work with it too? Why do you keep coming back and doing these?
I think the atmosphere is just intoxicating to me, because knowing that, I mean, you know, we all go to kind of quite like high performing universities. And I think that it's that kind of pressure that's like placed on us that leads to us kind of really letting go in these situations, because like it's just, you know, it's not just like a fun time, but it's also like a great opportunity to let off steam. And, you know, like so I think like that's like one aspect of it, you know, like when I've gone to kind of other sex parties and stuff that like weren't with Oxford students, like the vibe has been very different, and you know, not necessarily in a bad way, but you know, it's just like it's not the same kind of feeling of like relief and release that I did get at the Piers Gaveston Society. And you know, I think like, you know, I think sexual expression is great, and I think people like really like feeling themselves and trying new things is great. I think that kind of just experimentation and just being like, just like exploring your bodies and other people's bodies and kind of learning more about yourself in the process and all that are all really great things, and so I guess that's just kind of why I keep coming back to these, because I love the atmosphere. It's such a unique atmosphere that, you really, really don't get anywhere else. I think that, it's a very vulnerable space as well, kind of emotionally as well as physically. And I think like the kind of willingness for everyone to like literally bear all is really special and very unique.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything you said. I love that you know, that work hard, play hard thing. That's definitely true. And I think in spaces of, let's say, Zach likes to talk about the moral, like hedonistic parts, right? Like to really let yourself go and not feel stifled by shame or expectations and really just like let yourself get dirty. Like that's amazing. Really, how often do we let ourselves, especially with large groups of people, like to know that you feel comfortable enough surrounded by all these people to just like dig into your maybe like, I don't know what kind of fantasies you have. It's not like you're interacting with all of those fantasies, but at least in your mind, you know that you're like really pushing also what is easy. Like you said, it's not without the emotional, physical labor. Like, right. If you're hooking up with 3 people, that's 3 times as much attention to bodies and pleasure that you need to be giving. But like the reward is 3-fold as well. You get to make all these people happy. And I mean, yeah, it's definitely an intoxicating environment. And I've never felt as surrounded by love. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I remember when in a very prophetic foreshadowing, a month prior to this, my first ever, play party, being interviewed for Yale has lots of secret societies, I'm sure in a similar way Oxford does, being interviewed for one. And they're like, what is it you want to do with your time left in college? And I said, I want to shake the dust that has settled in the veins of Yale students. People on a rigid track and haven't, and are there. There's a very specific mindset and a specific rat race that everyone is a part of that is so stifling that I wanted to shake it up. And this is kind of the same sort of yearning that has, led me to non-monogamy, led me to like gender exploration, led me into sexual, all the sexual exploration I've done in my life. I just think I've just always felt unsatisfied with the way society does things, with the way how, the way growing up, being socialized male and everything that the way it's been weaponized to bully each other, all the problematic aspects of gender, all the problematic, the social script of heterosexual interactions.
Go off, Zach.
Especially in universities, the selfish nature of sexuality, that it is a game to get things from other people, the hyper individualistic nature of Western and American culture, especially, it pulled into realms that has nothing to do with individualism. It is pure, how feeling good and loving each other is the epitome of community events. And so all of this sort of like dissatisfaction with society at large, but especially the Yale campus, just sort of like made me feel this absolute call to action, and to call it action for action. And that's sort of translated into this finding Orgies as the beautiful vehicle to combat all of that. I didn't know about consent. Nobody talked about consent, quote unquote, until college. Like that, you learn what, if she says no and you do it anyways, it's rape, but everything else as a man, it's your duty to go for it. Like and that was, and then even when we started having those conversations in college, like it was so limited and so unsatisfactory because human interactions are so much more complicated. So using orgies as a way to teach radical consent culture was so valuable to me. Breaking down the individualistic, selfish model of heterosexual hookups was so important to me. Breaking people out of this sort of, fixation of their social reputation with regards to sexuality, living purely within these self-defined barriers of gender and sexual orientation also was, I'm at this point I'm rambling, but when it came down to these people, who invited me to this, and I found a space in which everything I was dissatisfied with can be, blown up in this beautiful way. I was so inspired that when they left, I just felt, I needed to do this. And it was hard. It was so hard for me. I didn't know what I was doing. I had also, early on in college, somebody accused me of sexual assault in a way that was, in retrospect, like totally false and unfair. But that was another layer of emotional challenge to work through. Like, how could I be the messenger of this thing when I'm so besmirched by this totally horrible thing. But I felt so compelled that the campus should have this, that I pushed through that. And, and I fantasized about in the future, like having our campus having this like well-oiled machine, well-lubed machine of an organization where that can big enough to accommodate anyone who would want to go, and has this sort of educational emphasis and this community, and it's run by a committee rather than just one person. And I go back to campus 4 years later to visit and meet G, and they had built the organization that I had spent my time in college fantasizing about the existence of.
Aww, and you got to come to that party in the 3-story house.
I know, it was so beautiful.
So maybe like, I love that for sure. And I think that like kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about is exactly this, like how does this model translate? How do we help facilitate stuff like this at other universities? And I think some of the pieces in there that are really important that I've seen is like fostering the diversity and inclusivity, right? Because like Zach, you said, like you want to break out of the like heteronormative mold, and that's really tough to do if you've got 25 straight guys and 25 straight girls. Like, that's, right. So like, how do we create an environment that is inclusive and fosters all of these
and
things?
At universities, but not even just at universities, outside
in
of
general,
that too.
In general, for sure. And then like maybe some other things like, like curating the guest list and gender ratios. And is there such a thing as a too big of a party or too small of a party? And I don't know. Maybe G, it sounds like you took the baton and almost built a framework around it. And I'd love to hear some thoughts from you.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out to my other organizing teammates, many of whom, like also people not even officially an organizer, but attendees who, really knew their shit in terms of how to event plan and also be equitable. We got a lot of crowd suggestions from attendees is what I'm saying. So I'm not taking full responsibility here, is all this caveat is to say. And
we understand sex is a collaborative thing.
yeah. I just want to be very clear. It wasn't all me running this show. We did have a questionnaire before. To get an invite, you had to already be on a PAN list, basically a large chain of emails that we recycled. We added new people to each time, but the people who wanted to come to multiple parties were allowed to stay on the PAN list. And we would have them fill out if they had been to an orgy before, if they had a guest they wanted to bring, their gender, their sexuality. And we definitely had to decide, in terms of space, that was a limiting factor in terms of numbers. And also, we couldn't invite 10 straight men and 2 femme people and see, that's not going to be a good time for anyone. Maybe a few people, but chances are it won't work. So it was always a stress of hey,
just how straight those guys are in those situations.
Yeah. Let's see how the spaghetti noodles. And it was always, that was part of the anxiety. Okay, who's going to show up? Who actually gets the invite? Who's going to come and make, be good energy? Because you want to incorporate new people each time, but you also don't want to have a party full of noobs, because then no one will get things started. So I guess let's say translating this outside of what I have already known to have existed, and seeing how other groups or communities could implement similar things. I would say have a vision first, set a number. The space is a limiting factor, but also just in terms of what you might feel comfortable throwing, maybe your own party for a first time. So if you have a couple of friends or play partners that know each other, try to meet for maybe give yourself an hour all together in a place with you're not allowed to take off your clothes. It's always more fun if there's some build up and that something's going to happen, but it's not allowed to happen yet. Right. So you're just hanging around having snacks and drinks. 'Cause that is a really, not necessarily alcohol, but just, hors d'oeuvres. And getting to know each other, talk a little. I like the fact that you guys have this circle of whoever's there sharing beforehand. And I think that's good, especially on a campus. A lot of the people do know each other, or it's not necessarily that you want to go and talk to everyone. You're there with a few friends. So definitely encourage finding friends that you want to go to parties with, that you might not be sexually active with, they're not a physical lover, but you'd be comfortable being next to each other while you both have sex with someone else. I think these kind of horizontal structures of support are really crucial. I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, I think it's beautiful. Yes. Do Leanne or Zach, do you have anything else to add?
I think what G said was beautiful. I think I agree with that, and I think on a practical level, I mentioned this in my own episode, but I think gender ratios to some extent are important, and I've generally seen things work out better when the group is majority queer and also majority women.
Yes.
Yeah. But majority queer, because then there's just kind of more fluidity and who can get with whom. And then more women, because I think more women just kind of particularly queer women, just contributes to an atmosphere where penetrative heteronormative sex is not the focus of the orgy, and people can participate in kind of more sensual activities that don't necessarily involve dick and vagina. And also, I think the dick owners in the room probably will struggle less with erections if they're not kind of pressured to fill every hole in the room, so to speak, or crudely. So yeah, basically just kind of majority, like women, femmes, like whatever, has in general contributed to like a much more kind of wholesome space and safer space as well. So yeah, that's kind of like on a practical level, like that would be my personal tip.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. How about you, Zach?
Yeah. A lot. There was a little bit of internal politics at conflict, like trying not to be stuck into gender stereotypes and norms, but in general, just it was better with more women. I think I think there was a couple reasons why that worked. One, like the more people are, especially at the college, I think the way men are socialized, it's a lot harder to be bisexual. So the more bisexual people there are, the better everything configures, right? There is the more the more fluid. It's even for otherwise straight. Like I, in general, exist in society as a straight man, but not in an orgy. I'm all game for all things. And that kind of is the vibe that works best. And it's easier for women to be that way. I think, there's a lot less stigma of, straight women, experimenting with other people. There's, also the way we've been socialized is it's easier for women to view sexuality as a collaborative experience. That's not about, getting something and, putting a dick in a hole. And so that sort of like communal atmosphere was easy. Obviously there's lots of guys that, break all those models and are fantastic. And I love inviting. You just need, and there are women that, definitely did not work, or add a lot to the environment. You find your cool people and you get there. But as a rule of thumb, 60% women, and generally a guest list that is as queer as possible. Yeah.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
I think I said it when I was interviewed. One of my favorite moments was like we were already like majority men, and I was feeling a little anxious about that. And a buddy showed up with like 5 straight guys, and at the door I was like, "Really, dude? What the fuck? That is social faux pas, but whatever. Come on in." And then, I don't know, I was making more punch or doing whatever host activity, and I came back, and all 5 of these otherwise straight dudes were all making out with one another and floating around, and I was like, all right, okay, yay college.
Yay college. That's why the term "the old college try," right? Yeah. That's where that comes from.
Awesome. As far as the more logistics of too big, there's always too big. The most important too big to worry about is too big to keep people safe. Too big to know and trust and monitor. So you could have any arbitrary number of people as long as you have the infrastructure and volunteers to make sure everyone is safe and the space. And then, the second, I think most important too big to worry about is the space. I am a big fan of just cramming a lot of bodies in a small room and watching magic happen. Not everyone feels that way. Maybe because I got
a sexy mosh pit.
Yeah. Maybe because I got my start in these tiny college dorms. That I kind of am partial to that. But definitely in New Orleans, when there's a lot more space, people get really upset if there's too many people for the space to which is fine. We're adults now. We can give ourselves space and room. There is also, there's the idea, there's a lot of anxiety of being sexual when there's strangers walking all around. I feel if I'm going to have fun and be sexy, probably my favorite amount is the 10 to 20 range, just as far as just my personal, gonna have a great time. But I'm also a social butterfly, so having
I agree
there so I could bounce around and and flutter from room to room and see what everyone's doing is also a lot of fun. But it's just as far as if I'm actually going to participate in sex, it'll probably only happen in the smaller events.
I just had a thought really quick. I'd love to say I think the golden ratio is enough people that you could hook up with all of them, like satisfactorily.
I love that. The bigger events, I find, for the smaller events, I prefer for sex. The bigger events, I prefer for kink, actually, because I'm also an exhibitionist.
Yeah.
So the last major kink party that I was involved, I was a volunteer at, had probably 300-400 people. The kick it off event was where I was bound to a cross and whipped by a dominatrix. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was sort of like the opening demonstration to try and get things started. So in the last couple of years, I've gotten really into kink and especially exploring my masochistic side. And so I'll say that when it comes to that kind of stuff, I do like a crowd.
Yeah, I jump in there and say I do like a crowd as well. Like, I think I, apart from just enjoying group sex, I also really enjoy the exhibitionistic aspect of it. I like having people watch, and and I do know actually some monogamous couples do go to these sex parties where they don't touch anyone else except each other, but they like being watched by other people and have them kind of spectate like in that aspect. But for me, I would kind of second like everything else that has been said here so far about kind of as long as you have the infrastructure for it, you can't have like too big a party. But personally, I have found like a happy medium with like 10 to 15 people. Like, I think that's where I feel most comfortable because I know everyone. I tend to know everyone and get to know them quite well. But then it's also not so small that like I'm kind of pressured to get with everyone else in the room particularly if there's someone that I'm not particularly attracted to, but it's also not so big that it's overwhelming. So that would be kind of my take. But equally, I've also really enjoyed myself in kind of bigger spaces. So yeah, it's not a kind of hard and fast rule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
I was going to throw a quick, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, of course. I was going to say a blanket statement that like G kind of touched on, but like, that's not a requirement when you go to these parties that you have sex with everyone. I think that was anyone. Perfect. Thank you. Yes. I think that's just an important point to make. Now, even though G's preference is that it can be everyone,
but it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
No, of course.
Everyone's mileage may vary. So I just
kind of, yeah. Like, as in like in a party, you want to be able to talk to everyone if you want to.
Yep.
Right. Like just having that option. Yeah.
Yep.
Not like I have to. Yeah,
totally.
No judgment, G. We don't judge.
No, it's not about judgment. It's just I'm not saying like that's what I meant. It's just like that the capacity for that is a nice.
Yeah.
No, that's great because I feel that way. Normal parties, my ideal size is enough time to talk to everyone at the party.
Exactly.
The ideal time is enough to make out with everyone at the party.
Yeah.
You get me.
Well, in the interest of time, because I know we could all keep talking for hours and hours, but we want to just, like, of course, thank all of you for joining us and doing this roundtable. And we wanted to let each of you go and see if you have any final thoughts that you wanted to get out there in the world.
I mean, just enjoy yourselves, guys. Just, explore your desires and try and find a way to make them happen as long as, you're not hurting anyone and everyone consents, Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't know if this is really on topic, but Zach had a blooper story that he thought I was going to tell last time that I didn't tell that is hilarious, and I think it should be known to the world.
Well,
but I think Zach should tell it.
Okay.
All right. Make it happen, Zach.
Okay. When she came to visit, definitely, unsurprisingly, had a lot of chemistry. But at one point we were doing a scene where G was all tied up, and very much like sort of the power play of aspect of kink. And so I had G tied up and, made them, play tug of war with Lloyd. So I got a toy, with and with using only mouth plate, won a tug of war game against the pug, and then needed ice for our glasses. So it was snowy outside, and so had G go outside, and while totally bound and tied,
and naked.
Yeah, totally. Of course, naked. Hands behind the back, go like gather some ice for our drinks. And yeah, it was a full night, lots of shenanigans. And then the next morning.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah. First thing in the morning, wake up, let the dogs out. Good morning, world. And I hear this voice like, "Hey, Zach." I don't know what's going on. And then behind me, right above my door, there's a camera with a little like speaker attached. And it's my landlord who's out of town going like, "Hey, Zach, just want to let you know this camera's here. I can see things out of it." and
right directly where I had been naked, tied up, getting snow.
Oh,
the evening before.
Oh my God.
And it was just like, the realization hits, and you're like, oh shit. But apparently the landlord kept like, it's like an older couple, and they kept being like, "When is your friend coming back?"
Always asking, "When are you coming back? When are they coming back?"
That is mortifying.
Yeah.
Like, I would just evaporate on the spot.
So you basically always want to be careful where you are in terms of like visibility, like the neighbors. You want the neighbors to know what's going on. Do you that's I guess the orgies at the Airbnbs are a good solution to that.
Cameras, you got to be aware of cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, know where the cameras are and and who's looking at them.
Right. Right, which actually could be something at Airbnbs too. You never know. So you got to check it out.
Yeah, I would say we had that at one time. We had an Airbnb with a hot tub, and there was a camera that pointed like at the door, and the hot tub was definitely within range of that camera. And so whenever we went and got in the hot tub, I'd just unplug the camera from the wall.
Like, nice.
Like, not my problem. I'm not going to leave that plugged in. So I'd just unplug all the cameras, and we'd go sit in the hot tub for a little while, and then we'd get out and I'd plug it back in. Yeah. Be aware.
But to the point, to the final wrap up thought, I'm just excited because I mean, like I said, what motivated me to be a part of sex party scenes is just, facilitating the societal shift. And it's a societal shift that is happening. Like, just in the few years I was in college, just the culture had shifted to where, to be more trans inclusive, gender non-conforming, queer inclusive, sex positive, consent heavy. Like, society is waking up to these issues, and I just, the fact Leanne's like experience, well, it's hard to compare entirely across the pond. Just shows to me that in the last 10 years, like, society has really changed in a beautiful, positive way. Like you said, the 2015 queer takeover, like that was. Love that. And I'm so excited to see the way those young people, our generation, us young people have changed the world and doing what we do. The way, Emma and Finn are changing the world with this podcast, the way G is out in the world. And I'm just very blessed to have been a part of it.
Aww. Beautiful words. Beautifully said.
Yeah, and thank you, Zach. And I just extend a further thank you to all three of you, like, for coming on the show to begin with. Zach, you put us in touch with G and a whole host of other
people. I
say characters in your life, not in a derogatory way, but they have been integral in your life in various ways, and we love that. And Leanne, thank you for being here as well. G, was there any final thought? I know you wanted to get the blooper of you hanging out on webcam in the Airbnb yard, but
I just thought it was a really great story that I missed the opportunity of last time. And no, I can't think of anything that Leanne and Zach haven't already eloquently put out there. Just want to reiterate how grateful I am to have gotten to grow within these communities, which you guys are all, I think included in terms of these sex positive and welcoming, and the fact that, we're all relative strangers, yet I feel like I can tell you this story about me being naked on a camera and we can laugh about it. And that's going back to what Leanne said about the wholesomeness. Like, that's what I love, that we can all be authentically ourselves and just be supported in that joy. So thank you.
Hit me up when you're in the UK, G.
I plan on it.
Fantastic.
I want to come.
I mean, hey, come shot.
Wow. I think we just...
We're all sighing.
I know.
Did we just become organizers?
Us?
I think that's what just happened.
I think so.
Well,
did we just become best friends?
Well, a final thank you to all of you. Again, thank you all for being here. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I hope we can, assemble the Brain Trust again in the future. This has been super fun. So,
thank you for getting that orgy love out there in the world.
Yeah. And have wonderful afternoons, evenings, mornings, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll all talk soon.
Thank you.
It's been a joy.
And we're back. We hope you all enjoyed that amazing discussion and had so much fun listening.
And learned.
Yeah.
This was an educational.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much again to Leanne, G, and Zach for coming on and sharing everything that you did. We obviously couldn't do these types of things without you all. So thank you again.
Yeah, and for coming on the show originally. And for anybody listening, definitely go back and listen to their episodes. All of them are fantastic.
And links are in the show notes.
Yes, links are in the show notes. There's an echo in here, isn't there?
You didn't say that part.
I know, you said it, and then I echoed it.
Okay.
I was making fun of myself this time, not you.
Got confused. Got it. Anyway.
Don't worry. You're good.
Okay.
Anywho, this week.
On Wednesday.
In 2 days. You don't have to wait that much longer to hear us again.
We have an amazing interview with Jarrett, who is Jamie's partner. Jamie was on episode 184. You don't need to go listen to episode 184 before this one, but it may help.
You've got a whole day.
Right, so go listen to that one.
What else are you going to do?
Jamie's episode is incredible as well. So we're excited to get Jarrett's story out there. Stay tuned. That'll be coming out on Wednesday. And in the meantime, go to our website, normalizing.non-monogamy.com, and click on the Contact Us page. We'd love to hear from you. The Podcasts tab has all the show notes and links and photos of our guests and everything. And then the somewhat new Community tab with Patreon and in-person events and virtual events. Go check it all out.
Also, just to be clear, our in-person events are not orgies.
No, that's a good clarification.
Just to clarify, I don't know. We thought, we're talking about orgies. Maybe I should clarify. This is not an orgy. They are meet and greets. It's actually going to be at a park. So, no orgies in the park. That should be the title of this episode.
I think I like our title.
All right, we'll stick with the title. We'll see everybody on Wednesday. Thank you again, Leanne, G, and Zach, and thank you, listeners, for being here.
And hanging in this long episode.
Yes, and we will see you all in a couple of days.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.